have described Israel's assault on Gaza as genocide, and you've talked about Israel having to face consequences. What do you mean very specifically by that?
I mean, if we look at just what's happening now in northern Gaza, where we have a complete blockade of any access for humanitarian goods, coupled with a continuing military assault, without any real pathways for civilians to find shelter or to find safe zones, that can only be described as a form of genocide. It is certainly against humanitarian law, international humanitarian law, and that is feeding a continuing cycle of violence, because this level of destruction, this level of really devaluing of human lives, of the lives of ordinary Palestinians, will feed a cycle that is against everybody's interest. And that's why we are trying to focus, even in this very difficult time, on a better future. And that's why we have focused on the issue of a two-state solution, of building a Palestinian state. I will say that while we talk about a two-state solution, the reality is the state of Israel exists. So now it's about establishing the state of Palestine and ensuring that the Palestinians can reach a place where they receive their right to self-determination. And that's our focus, because, again, similar to Vision 2030, similar to what we're trying to do for Saudi Arabia, we want to look at this region from a positive side point. And that means we want to look to the future. We want to look towards a future that is stable, that is safe, where everybody can work with each other, where we can all cooperate with each other. And that's why we're focused on trying to find not just an end to the immediate conflict, but to also work towards making sure that we do not get drawn into repeats of where we are today.
But in the speech on Monday, the Israeli Prime Minister made no mention of a need to end the war in Gaza. No talk of any, quote, day after plans. No mention of the Palestinians. Now, you have been, and just this week with the meeting here in Riyadh, hoping to get some concrete steps that would, as we say, create this pathway to a Palestinian state or an independent Palestinian state. How concerned are you when you hear no mention of the Palestinians, nor any mention of the day after by the current Israeli Prime Minister? What does that suggest to you? And when we talk about a pathway, what does that specifically mean?
I'm, of course, incredibly concerned, because that tells me that there is a real lack of understanding of the strategic reality. We are here in this region. We are stuck in this region, all of us, the Palestinians, everybody, and we're going to have to find a way to live with each other. And we can only live with each other if we address the rights of the Palestinians, if we address the issues of injustice that the Palestinians face right now, and that is going to have to be a serious discussion. If that's not going to happen, we are setting ourselves for a continuing cycle of violence that serves no one except the extremists. What does a pathway to a Palestinian state mean? That means many things, and that's why we have this new, that's why we, with the European Union, Norway, and our colleagues in the Arab League and OIC, launched this coalition for a two-state solution, because we realized that, just as you said, that perhaps in Israel, unfortunately, the conversation right now isn't addressing the reality that there's going to have to be a two-state solution. The rest of the international community seems to be fully committed to that. Now we need to translate that commitment into concrete steps. That's going to include capacity and state building, building of state institutions within the Palestinian territories. It will also mean that we have to build on the existing international law that supports the establishment of a Palestinian state. From our perspective, of course, Palestine should become a member of the United Nations without delay. All of these issues are things we want to work on. So there are elements of Palestinian statehood that are tied, obviously, to a negotiation between the Palestinians and Israel, the settlement of borders, things like that. But in reality, the establishment of a Palestinian state is not tied to whether or not Israel accepts it. It's tied to the principles of international law. And I will say that the United Nations resolutions that led to the establishment of the State of Israel clearly had a Palestinian state in view as well. So we need to make that happen.
What you have made clear is that any normalization deal with Israel would need, before it was a reality, you would need to see at least a viable pathway towards a Palestinian state. So a couple of questions to you. Will a verbal commitment from Benjamin Netanyahu suffice? Were you to get on a sort of, on a pathway that you felt was worth sort of tabling for an independent state? And if not, what specific measures does Saudi need to see to move forward? And what is Saudi Arabia's message to Benjamin Netanyahu? Is normalization with Israel at genuine risk should you not see this commitment from Israel?
I would say certainly normalization with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is not just at risk, it is off the table until we have a resolution to Palestinian statehood. But I would say more than that. I would say that it is not just the issue of normalization with the kingdom that is at risk. I would say that the security of the region as a whole is at risk if we do not address the rights of the Palestinians, if we do not find our way to a pathway that leads us to a Palestinian state, because that's the only way we can ensure that we can focus on the future, that we can focus on cooperation, that we can focus on integration. So I would hope that the leadership of Israel sees that it is not just the right thing to do, it is not just the moral thing to do, it is not just the just thing to do to give the Palestinians their rights and their state. It is also in the security and strategic interest of Israel to do so. And that's, I think, up to them to decide.
Certainly the Lebanese Prime Minister is optimistic. He says that that deal for Lebanon could come in the hours, if not days, to come. Do you share his optimism, and how do you feel about any progress being made for Gaza at this point?
Yeah. I would say I hope it's the case that we can see a ceasefire in the immediate hours, in the immediate short term. I'm not sure that that's the case. I don't have the details. We are not part of the direct negotiations that are going on. We certainly support the effort that the US is undertaking to find a pathway to a ceasefire. I hope it comes to fruition. It's the same for Gaza. We have had, unfortunately, many false starts, many pronouncements of a near deal for a ceasefire in Gaza, only to be disappointed. And my understanding is that we have in most of those instances where the talks eventually collapsed, it has been because there have been new requirements or new demands added on the part of Israel. I hope that at this point we can finally reach a ceasefire that spares what is left of Gaza, the people of Gaza, and gives them an opportunity to finally see some peace.